Well, damn, we are seeing large changes to Dragonflight looting. This is going to be some impactful stuff that you will feel, and a bunch of it is what people have been asking for. Beyond that then, we've got an update on the state of testing, a change to how death works in the World of Warcraft, and just a whole bunch more details. Now, of course, if you missed it, we do have a release date, Season 1 changes, and a few other things which were in a video a few days ago, so check that out if you're out of the loop. And with that said, let's get stuck in. Okay then, this is a truly massive change for raiders. Group loot is returning, we already knew that, but we've now found out via a blog post from Skarzard that personal loot will not be active in raids. Well, at least for gear. Some profession items and things like that will, but no. For gear, it will just be group loot. The need and greed UI will return, along with some new rules on how players can roll. I think getting those new rules right is, that's going to be the thing that is make or break for this. They've also removed item level trading restrictions. Now, this is pretty ballsy. I think this is what a lot of established raiders will have wanted, right? It just means so much for people who raid together, right? We will now be able to distribute loot to who needs it the most. We can work that out as a bunch of friends playing the game together. So for stable guilds who actually want to work as a team, this is really fantastic. It puts loot distribution back in your hands. Now, Master Looter will not be returning, so look, if, you know, the loot, it drops on the boss, the need greed stuff happens, if you win the roll, I mean, it is yours unless you trade it, right? So with this system, there is no single, raid leader who can just run tyranny, at least on paper. Now, an issue that the dev team found with personal loot is that it was somewhat exploitable, right? You could just stack the same armor type or the same weapon type, and this would just mean more of that loot because personal loot just guaranteed that the loot would be usable. So that is something that was kind of like, often gained to funnel loot to characters, which is a bit odd. It also kind of punished mail wearers by default because there were fewer mail wearing classes. Now then, loot, it just drops on the boss. If a bow drops from the boss and you don't have a hunter, that's that. And this is actually how loot worked for the vast majority of the game, right? It's not a bing bing wahoo, slot machine every time you kill a boss. It is your team killed the boss, this loot is on the boss, what will we do with it? I think that's something that's more fundamental to, well, just the fantasy of an MMO. So with a system like this, it does give everyone the same chance of getting loot, usable overall dropping for the team of players than, than maybe a group comp would otherwise have. And of course, it also does incentivize rolling a diversified set of classes, so that you do cover the loot that can drop. Now, with this, you could say that there may be some winners and losers, right? Now, since Master Loot will not be returning, you will never have a Master Loot pug where the raid leader just steals gear. That won't happen. Pugs will use need greed. And there will be restrictions, of course, on who can actually roll need. That's something that I think in the comments a lot of people have perhaps forgotten. Like, you can't need on stuff that's not going to be useful for your character. And we don't have any situations like we do, say, in Wrath of the Lich King, where a hunter will be rolling for a main-spec melee weapon. Obviously, a survival hunter will want a melee weapon, but you know what I mean, the old hunter loot memes, right? So that sort of thing, you can't need stuff you're not going to use. So it's really not much of a difference. Really, the chances of you, on average, getting loot are pretty much the same. The difference with personal loot is that all those rolls just happen behind the scenes and you get informed about the result and then have to deal with trading restrictions. So really not a massive difference in pugs, but it will, it'll be great for us. That said, for the pugs though, this enhanced visibility into loot distribution will interact with more toxic players in a fun way. Now, as for who the winners are, it's obvious. It's, well, people like me, right? It is people who raid in a guild. I've raided with the same group of people since patch 8.3. Yeah, we're a team. We constantly, like nearly every raid tier, multiple times, would get super annoyed at the item level trading restrictions. They sucked. They were so annoying for doing good loot distribution. So we pretty much got what we asked for. Now, I don't think people were super hard advocating for removing personal loot altogether. Now that said, as was proved by raids in Legion, there are definitely negatives to having two different loot systems working, right? They each have their own quirks and features, and doing loot tables, Blizzard have actually went into this in the past, doing loot tables is a little bit of a nightmare with that. But I think here there are cases where personal loot can kind of suit well enough. But, I mean, really here it just is the thing. You kill the boss dies, the loot's on the boss, you roll for the loot. That's it. If someone can't use a bit of loot, they're not able to roll need. Therefore, assuming the rolling rules are good, then the whole situation's fair, and this works, and it's a good thing. So, yeah, that's good. Now, do you want some real loot? Well, you can get some pretty damn awesome loot, including the art special that we are running this month on Patreon. It's Paladin Month, so you'll be getting the Paladin class card, as well as the continuation art from the world that we are building, and, of course, doing more fantasy creatures for the pins. So there's all that. Also podcasts, they are back. There's many hours of deep lore content, most recently on The End of the Universe and Neltharion, but me and Jared are going to be recording a pretty fun podcast episode on Tuesday as well. So Patreon, it's all popping off there, and of course, all your support goes right back in to making more content and growing the team. Next though, that ain't it for loot changes. Oh no, and these ones are actually, well, they're quite interesting. So each raid difficulty will have 3 tiers of loot, up from the 2 that we previously saw, right? So as an example, for Normal Vault, the new raid, the first 4 bosses drop 389, middle 3 drop 395, and final 2 drop 389. Interesting. Per Blizzard, basically, the sort of mid-tier wall bosses like Sludgefist, Halondrus, and Painsmith, they're really cool bosses. Players love them. I certainly actually loved all those bosses, but they didn't reward players for that increase in difficulty. Blizzard basically think if you're doing a harder boss, you should get a reward that's in line with that challenge. So, fair enough. I think this could make progress feel pretty good as well. As potentially will their next big change. And that is that Blizzard are experimenting with bosses having special items. These may even have a higher item level. Now, this ain't Titan Forging. It's basically a bit like Sylvanas Daggers, where it's a special item, it's really powerful, but there was a problem with the Sylvanas Daggers. They were more powerful than their item level suggested. So Blizzard basically thinks that loot like this is fun, but they want it to be more clearly communicated and be part of the game. So these new special items can have unique effects, appearances, or could just be a particularly cool trinket. You can also expect lower drop rates on these. I guess I could almost call them like mini legendaries within a tier, just cool, rare loot drops. Overall then, I actually think this is pretty damn good. Now, it could maybe be annoying for the people who are just entirely devoting their whole existence to chasing that orange Parson Warcraft logs, but I think that considering that this is a big old MMORPG, the idea of there being a big, super powerful piece of rare loot, that's actually fun. Right? So if this lets them just make more memorable, interesting, wacky designs, then that's really good. And another good thing is that this could be quite nice for the longevity of raids. Plus, in a world where Mythic Plus can seem like it's gobbling up a lot of the loot progression in the game, this gives raids something special. And yeah, I do like that. The next thing then is BOEs. They are getting revamped, and oh boy, they're very different now. So, you know those sort of named lieutenant mini-bosses that you find within a raid's trash? Well, they're going to drop BOEs. And the number of BOEs that drop, that will scale with raid size, and assuming a full clear of the raid, they will be guaranteed. So these are going to be more common item. They're even going to put more important slots, like weapons, on this. Now, I guess the idea of auction housing a weapon is a bit weird. There's obviously a large asterisk on this that we'll get to, but what it is from Blizzard, though, is a clear move to make trash feel more worthwhile. I think that given how we all just death-skipped trash and Sepulchre, they pretty much thought, right, we either nerf the shit out of trash, do far less of it, and just let the players do the bosses like they seem to want to, Or they decide we keep trash, but we actually make it be properly, dependably rewarding. Because they said their stated goal was to make the raid environment almost feel like a ninth boss. Alright, I guess for me, if it's more you're killing like cool lieutenant mini-bosses, that's great. But if it feels like just walls and walls of health bar sponges and it's really boring, then that just isn't going to feel great for pacing. Yeah, and obviously there's a massive WoW token-sized elephant in the room. And that's the challenging thing, right? An MMO is strong when there's a good virtual economy. I mean, hell, just look at all the cool new things they're doing for crafting professions. But ultimately, WoW token does codify the whole time equals money thing that we've talked about a whole bunch, and theoretically it does mean that somebody could just drop a whole bunch of gold and buy a mythic weapon. That feels kind of weird. But I suppose then again, for the player who actually gets that mythic weapon and decides to put it in the auction house, it'll feel pretty good to them. Yeah, so look, I'd say this is a clear win if it weren't for the WoW token bit. Okay, another big change is coming. Res Sickness. It's only going to last for 1 minute, but it's going to damage your armor by 50%, up from 25%. Essentially, Blizzard want to keep the death penalty, which is fair, there should be one, but they think that a 10-minute debuff, it just makes people log out. That's definitely true. I mean, I never really use spirit healers because of the 10-minute debuff. Now, knowing that I could get a negligible debuff and just take a bit of an economic hit, but mount up, repair, and then get back into the game, well, to be honest, I think that's better. That said, it will cost more gold. I don't really see it as being something worthy getting furious over, though. We really don't use the spirit healers to res much at all. And I think this just means that if we do want to do that, we're not going to feel like we should just log out. Next then, a funny situation. So, imagine your beta has a bug, but suddenly you're being showered with praise for that bug. So, now imagine how people will react if you fix the bug. That is what happened to Blizzard. So, a bug appeared on Reputation vendors that would let people purchase transmog appearances for all armor types off these rep vendors. Now, people loved that. It was cool, you get the rep, you just buy all the armor ensembles. Then it was fixed. But it's not as bad as some people think. The unlocks are account-wide, but you need to be an armor type that can use the ensemble in order to buy it. So that effectively just means you'll need to log onto your alt to buy the ensemble for another armor type. That's it. The rep track rewards are in fact still unlocked account-wide. Now, Blizzard said they did it this way because they don't want people to be confused at vendors, right? The idea of just, you hit the rep, you see, one for each armor type, and you're like, oh no, I can only equip one of these. That's not a big problem. I really don't think that's too confusing to people. It's just a little frustrating that you'll need to log into a bunch of characters and go buy the thing again. But at least the, whatever renown level required to unlock the thing won't be required on your alts because that is account-wide. At least the renown level isn't, but the unlock, the ability to buy the thing, that is. Now, sadly, this is not retroactive, and that does actually mean that for Shadowlands Covenants, yeah, you've got to do the renown track on a character of the armor type that you want, and that kind of sucks. Okay. Other Dragonflight news. We do have some neat things. Well, one thing, we've got our wish! Grid snapping is now enabled for the new UI's edit mode, and combined with the grid being scalable, it basically means you've got all the tools you need for a clean setup. But, without having buff-debuff filtering, I do feel that many will be left wanting more from the UI. Now, sticking in UI, Blizzard have actually added Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch controller icons. So there's not much of a functional change here because the controller compatibility was actually added with 9.0, and that meant that WoW actually does work natively with a gamepad. You don't need to use a third-party tool like WoW Mapper anymore. Overall, this is good. I mean, for the add-on console port, which is fantastic, this was all very handy. As for them adding these icons, it could just be there for if people plug their controllers in. Who knows? I mean, maybe one day Blizzard will have a Final Fantasy XIV-like feature set. I mean, for the bean counters, WoW being on consoles would certainly be a no-brainer for engagement and making number go up. and FF14 does show that that can work, and quite a few people play that game on a PS4. But, look, admittedly, there are challenges. The WoW team have never designed with controller gameplay in mind. That said, it's not as bad as you think. Far from it. If you look at my old console port investigation videos, it's surprisingly good, actually. So, there's that. Over to testing then. So, Vault of the Incarnates raid testing is about to begin. Basically, that and Mythic Plus are the major outstanding things to get tested, so we really are getting there. That's nice, and that's also made clear by another announcement from the class team. They said that they are moving away from spending time on developing new talent trees. Instead, they are focusing on fixing bugs and tuning things, which, given that the expansion comes out at the end of November, yeah, they definitely need to stop those things and get what they've got in a good state for launch. Now, a lot of the time that could be kind of disappointing, because it does mean that at least until the game comes out, that's it for major reworks, and so many of those major reworks that we've got have actually been quite good. But this is where there's a bit of a change. They said that with the overall changes to classes and talents being so large in this expansion, that we can actually expect to see them continue actioning on class design feedback throughout the expansion. So this at least does suggest a degree of them not leaving problems for a whole expansion, right? That they actually will respond to design feedback. So maybe a new patch comes out, and with it comes a bunch of class changes. I mean, as an example, right? Just of this not going well, the Balanced Druid changes that came in recently are essentially addressing feedback about Balanced Druid that I noted in Shadowlands Alpha. Shadowlands. Was quite a while ago. Now, also, sneaking in and around the same time as that news, there was a large Preservation Evoker change, and that is a 30-yard healing range up from the previous 25 that it shared with Devastation. Basically, Blizzard's idea here was to have a potent, highly mobile, but slightly restricted healer. So the idea is, they're zooming around the place, dishing out loads of healing, and in order to compensate for their potency and their movement speed, they have less range. So, interesting enough, it's trying to fill a different niche. That said, they have increased that range. This has just been done to make the range feel less prohibitive, when also combined with the overall frequent casting of empowered spells. And on the topic of empowered spells, they're increasing their cooldown. They're also increasing their power, at least of the empowered healing spells. So you won't use them as much, but when you do use them, they will matter more. So overall, I think this is for the best. I think 25 was maybe just a smidge small. They still are clear that their commitment here is to a mobile mid-range healer. So that's the plan. They will have a lower range, but it's one that will be compensated for by other strengths. And you might think, oh, it's only 5 yards less. That's not much. But remember, there's a relationship between diameter and volume, right? Like the area covered. So 30 instead of 35 is actually quite impactful in a real-world situation. Okay, that's it. There's a few other nice tidbits. One of them was leveling alts. So once you've got your first character through, it will basically work a bit like Threads of Fate, where you can just do the zones in any order, including like the side quests and the world quests. So that should be pretty good. And then other than that, we just had like UI updates, like the background art for the talent windows, and yeah, stuff like that. The new renown bars actually do look pretty damn good. And remember, I say renown bars, it does not work like Shadowlands renown, so you don't have to worry, Dory. If it did work like Shadowlands renown, I would let you know, and I would not be happy. So, Wrath Classic is out, and if you are on a mega server, then maybe you got past the queue. Maybe you didn't. I was on a full server that actually it's not locked, and I've not had a single queue at all, even at peak times. And that's a full server. Now, obviously, it was never a surprise that the mega servers would get absolutely rammed. And despite this being clear for weeks and weeks and weeks, Blizzard saying this quite a lot, and Blizzard offering free transfers and just talking about the problem openly, some people were somehow surprised that there were queues for the mega servers. Yeah, now, it is understandable that a customer could be frustrated in that situation, but I mean, people were able to know, but I'm not going to let Blizzard off on it. I mean, they knew this was a problem. They they had a large degree of caution, right? Because they didn't want to do things that would break up people's social groups or, put any big restrictions there. But eventually it did become clear that the mega server problem was really going to be a problem. And some of the changes they implemented, like the free transfers, they just came too late. And that has meant for some people stuff like 503-minute long queues. That's painful. For myself then, well, me, Matt, and Jared have been having fun bouncing around the Howling Fjord and Borean Tundra. Honestly, I'm just taking it cozy and slow and playing Hunter because that's what I raided with in Trial of the Crusader at ICC. Oh wow, it feels different. I mean, aim shot is instant. It's wild. Stutter stepping. It's funny, it doesn't have all of the kind of procs and craziness of, of what I'm used to now on live. I don't actually main anymore because I haven't really enjoyed I just haven't enjoyed Hunter since the BFA rework. But anyway, I'm actually kind of loving it. It's weird because, yeah, it's quite simple, but it feels nice and clear and relaxing. And there's even things because there's not 500 billion procs all the time, I actually notice my auto shot damage again. That's crazy. And the whole mana management thing, that's not, Uber Sweat Lord, Gosu Gamer crazy 5-dimensional chess gameplay, but I kind of like having the rhythm of my burn phase and my conserve phase. I don't know, it's really satisfying. And even, it's just that thing that older WoW has where, yeah, the combat pace is pretty different to the game right now, but you could perhaps say there's less, but there's more focus on it. So, the mana bar as a hunter, or even things like stutter stepping. Minimum range, right? If I'm standing a foot away from you, I can't hit you with my bow. Instead, my character uses the polearm. And it's that does feel quite thematic, and I do actually quite like that. And it's funny because I was there in Cataclysm. Wasn't it Cata? Maybe I forget, I don't know. I was there whenever Hunter minimum range was removed in the game, and we were all just thrilled, because a lot of the time it would be kind of annoying in a boss fight. But the other side to it is, it does mean as a Hunter, I have a clear negative for the incredible damage on the move that I can do. And there's even things like the stutter stepping gameplay. If you don't know what that is, by the way, you cannot fire an auto shot or whatever while you are running as a Hunter. So what you do is you basically have a little swing timer, and depending on the swing timer, when it's about to go, you stop still, your character lets off the auto shot, and then you move again. And it's one of those little things where the stutter stepping, I don't know if it was intentionally designed gameplay, but it does mean that a Hunter, literally moves differently. And just the implications of that are quite interesting. But anyway, I've been having an absolute blast. It feels lovely. I've always really loved Northrend. And to be honest, the whole slower pace of leveling, it means that leveling actually does feel like a journey, not just a quick little thing you get over. And I'm enjoying it, It's great. I like Northrend. I like the world building. I like the storytelling. Even take Tyrion. And this is the sort of thing, if you don't pay attention, you don't notice, but it kind of rewards you paying attention. The quest to get the blade in Howling Fjord, and how that ties in with Tyrion. You don't even talk to Tyrion, you're working for, another guy that Tyrion is there with, but your actions have an impact on Tyrion, and he just sort of goes and, does his thing without having a big conversation with you. You are an adventurer rather than, the hero, rather than being the champion, and that does actually, to me, feel like a nice break in pace. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. To be honest, we've got Wrath Classic. I am sure there's maybe millions playing that. It could be very big, overall, right? Wrath was the peak of the game. Or at least it's probably added, a good many 100,000. Millions is probably a silly number to use, but we can be pretty sure that it's pretty damn popular. So that's been really cool. Of course, there is Season 4 in the live game right now. We've got pre-patch at the end of October, and just 4 weeks after that, a month after that, we've got Dragonflight, and then Dragonflight supposedly will have smaller but more frequent patches on account of Blizzard's larger development team, so even that sounds pretty good. I don't know, it's weird. I don't think I'm huffing copium. I'm just, actually having fun with WoW every time I play it. I'm either healing in my Priest, playing Discipline and some Mythic Plus dungeons. I know that's off meta, but fuck it. I think Disc is cool, so I'm playing it. That's really fun. Got my Hunter and Wrath. Dragonflight stuff's actually shaping up really good. There we go. That sure hasn't been the narrative for the last, I don't know, 5 years, but it's pretty damn refreshing that it seems to be what's going on now. Of course, for all things, only time will tell, but overall, I'm actually feeling quite good, feeling quite positive about things, and that is a lovely change in pace. So, that's what's up. Of course, if you'd like to support the team and get some very cool loot for yourself, you can check out the Patreon links down below. If you want to also support us, there is, of course, our game. If you want a sort of Antarctic exploration-inspired survival, narrative, role-playing game, you can check that out. Stuff is shaping up really, really awesome there, and we'll have more info soon. But yeah, those are the links and things, and now that I've done my shilling, farewell. I will see you next week.